Hi there, my name is Jody Nickerson and we're going to go through a subject today that a lot of people have close to their heart, which is fire by friction. Today we're going to look at the bow drill, and the bow drill is one of the most unique of all types of fire by friction, simply because of the fact that you can do fire by friction with the bow drill the same way that it's been done for thousands of years. The results are always good, and it doesn't take a lot of work or skill once you master the basics. So stay tuned, we'll show you fire by friction with the bow drill. I'm going to show you the parts of the bow drill. First and foremost, we have our fireboard. The fireboard is kind of the nest where the coal is going to be created. It's going to be created from wood dust in here. The friction acting on that wood dust is actually going to ignite it basically at the molecular level. And it's going to slide down in a little notch in here. And what will happen once it slides into the little notch, it will build up. As it builds up, it actually coagulates. The dust will congeal into one lump, one mass. And once that mass is ignited, it will actually hold together uniformly. As it holds together, we're going to blow it into a glowing coal. That coal will then catch tinder that we have underneath, and once that's caught, then we can nurse it into a full-blown flame. So this is the fireboard. This is our handhold. The handhold should be comfortable. Goes in your non-dominant hand, in other words, the hand that you're not going to be using the bow with. I have mine kind of custom made with notches so that I can hold it. And the purpose of this is to apply pressure downward through the spindle so that the spindle will create friction on the fireboard, thus giving us the heat we need to ignite that coal. Should be comfortable, should allow you to hold the spindle firmly, and as well it should be made of roughly the same type of wood, the same hardness type of wood as your fireboard and your spindle. The next part, of course, is the spindle itself. The spindle works as the rotating part, and what it does is creates the working surface that goes into the fireboard. And as it goes into the fireboard, the surface of this and the surface of the fireboard rubbing together rapidly will create the coal. Should be about the diameter of your thumb. For women, maybe a bit larger. It's probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch around, as smooth as possible. This was actually hand carved, so it's kind of oval, but it works for me. And probably anywhere from 6 to 8 inches long. We'll show you later how you'll get those edges to be the perfect way that you need them to be in order to accommodate both the handhold and the fireboard. The last part of our system is probably the most important, which is our bow. The bow should typically be a little bit longer than your arm, from armpit out to fingertip, 3.5, 4 feet long maybe. The purpose of the bow is to take this spindle, and once you take the spindle, you're actually going to rotate it rapidly in a sawing motion. And as that sawing motion speeds up in the fireboard, it'll create the heat that causes the fire, the coal. Now you'll notice the string isn't tight on this, it's actually quite loose. Ideally, what you'd like to do is have one end fastened permanently and the other end with a different style knot so that you can undo it if you need to. What you want to do is be able to twist your spindle in here and get it tight, but not too tight that it actually compresses the spindle or glazes it over. So it should be firm. If you let go, it'll throw it out fairly rapidly. But too loose, you won't get that coefficient of friction that's needed in order to spin the spindle back and forth. Too tight, you're actually going to glaze over this working surface. And once that working surface is glazed over, it's just going to spin back and forth. It'll actually rub back and forth, but it won't spin the spindle. So the bow's quite important. As far as cordage is concerned, most of the ancient and indigenous people would use any type of cordage they could get. Rawhide works great when it's moist, when it's fairly wet. You can use cordage made from cedar bark, any of the other types of grasses that will work fine. I've got synthetic here simply because it's easier for demonstration purposes. But anything that gives you a fairly large diameter, has a good coefficient of friction, and something that'll be strong enough so that it will hold together at least until you make your coal. Now that we've seen the individual parts of the bow drill, let's take a look at how they work together to make your coal. First and foremost, you have your drill, or your bow itself. Now the bow itself, we talked about the length of it, the cordage that's in here. What we want to do is make sure that we hold it at least 1/3 of the way in, maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of the way of the entire length of it. And when you're doing your bowing, you're going to use it in a sawing motion on a level plane. In other words, you're not going to be tipping down, you're not going to be tipping it up, you're not going to be wiggling it back and forth like a violin player. You want to keep it as repeatable, the motion that you use, as possible. So when you come back, you want to make sure that this end doesn't go too far back that it actually hauls your spindle out of the fireboard. Conversely, you don't want to hold it so far that you can't get full extension of your bow itself. And what you don't want to do is position this so that you don't get your full stroke on the bow. So by saying that, you want to make sure your spindle basically goes from end to end. And that's what we'll do. So I'll show you how to put this in. Something I didn't mention in the last segment is that there are two different types of wood surfaces on the spindle. The one that goes into the actual fireboard itself is going to be a non-lubricated surface. And what I mean by non-lubricated is, it's going to be just basically a wood surface. The other end that goes into your handhold is actually going to be lubricated. Now you can do this with any type of animal fat, rendered tallow, anything that you have available. Petroleum-based lubricants are not recommended, but anything that's natural, even the oils from your nose, can go in here and act as a good lubricant. The reason why we want that is that all of the force of the bow drill, we want to make sure that that force is being transferred into the bottom of the spindle. When that goes into the bottom of the spindle, that's going to heat up this little nest here. If we have the forces distributed equally between the top and the bottom, then what we're going to do is be starting a fire basically at the top and at the bottom. We don't want to put our energy into the handhold, we want to put our energy into the fireboard itself. So what we'll do is set this up so that we have a nice small lubricated surface at the top, we have a larger surface at the bottom. Make sure you don't contaminate this with any oils from your hand or by setting it in any type of liquid or whatever. You really want it just to be wood on wood when we do this. So how do we put this together? Well, first thing we want to do is steady our fireboard. We'll put our foot on the fireboard and make sure that it's not going anywhere, it's nice and secure. We'll be using our body weight as well, just to make sure that it doesn't go flying or slip or throw our technique off. Second thing we're going to do, make sure that the bow portion is on the outside. Always have the string or the cordage against your leg. And what we want to do is simply take the end that we want into the fireboard and reverse it. So if we wanted it to go in like this, turn it 180 degrees so that the fireboard part's up, the handhold part is down, put it in, flip it through, and it reverses direction. So now the lubricated part is at the top, the bare surface is at the bottom. Simply set it in to the little hole that you've created in your fireboard with the notch. And you take your handhold, put it on here, secure it, and you're ready to go. Proper fit and form. You can see as you saw along, you're getting full rotation. It's like this is the call of the wild turkey portion. Now let's take a look from the other side. Okay, now that we've seen our proper technique with the bow, let's take a look at the position of the body. You'll notice that my legs are making a 90-degree angle. This is going to allow me to put my weight, sometimes if I want to use my chest or my stomach, down on that leg. It's also kind of creating a bit of a tripod. You'll see my rear leg is down at almost a 90-degree angle as well. I'm using it to stabilize myself for balance. This top leg is going to be used for securing the fireboard. This leg also, by creating a vertical surface here, allows me to hold my handhold very closely to my shin bone. And that prevents any type of rocking motion. If you had your leg out, you'd find that your hand is very wobbly. We don't want that wobble going on. So what we're going to do is wrap our arm around, secure our notch where our wrist is into our shin bone, like so. And then when we do our bowing, we can actually get a full extension, have very little wobble of the hand, we have stability in the body, and we have an unimpeded stroke of the bow. You can see it goes out my backside, my arm has full sweep, and I can go up the front and I can do a repeatable stroke of the bow.